The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. Keep your mission on your mind and your mind on your mission. This is Mission Minded with Michael Coleman.
Hey, welcome back to another Mission Minded. Along with Michael Coleman is the CEO of the Heart of Alabama Food Bank down there in beautiful Montgomery, Alabama. They cover 35 counties in the great state of Alabama. I'm Tony Kurre. This is Mission Minded. Keep in mind your mission on your mind. We also do the show called Bite by Bite, which you can hear at least 5 times a week right here on the TKR app. And like most people, we're seeing our numbers change from week to week, going up. Sometimes we see those TKR numbers stay about the same, Michael, and sometimes we see the podcast numbers up. And then normally it's pretty interesting too. And about 3 or 4 days after we air these originals, then our podcast numbers start to go up because people start listening on the backside. And that's why we do our podcast, and that's why you can watch us here on our YouTube channel, which is kind of cool because we know a lot of people like that as well. So how you doing, my friend? Everything good?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Glad to be with you. Always look forward to this time we get to spend together. I wish we lived in the same city and could break bread more often, but for now, I'll take it just being with you this once a week.
Well, I owe you a breakfast or a lunch, and I promised I'd get down there the next couple of weeks, and I will do that. So I love coming down there and to see you. And by the way, if anyone ever wants to go down and check out your facilities, tell people where exactly you're located and how they can contact you.
Yeah, they can reach out to me. My email is on our website, hafb.org. I would love to have them come down. Be glad to give them a tour. Talk with them about any. I'm more versed in the nonprofit space. I have a lot of people who call me and ask my thoughts on the nonprofit idea they have, how to start a nonprofit, just all that. And one of the reasons I was committed to always helping people was because when I started my nonprofit, not the one I'm working at now, but I started one that's still very successful here in Montgomery back in 2000. I started in 2011. Into 2012. And back then, there was not anybody that really I could turn to. And so I was getting just little bits here and there and very frustrating, made a lot of mistakes. And I just said, one of the things I want to do is be able to give back to people who are trying to make the world better, who are investing. A lot of people have ideas about the nonprofit space, but they don't really know what it is to step over into that world.
Yeah.
Especially when you're starting it and you're the founder of something and it all falls to you. It's like when you're used to renting and there's a water leak, you call the landlord, you don't worry about it. When you buy a house, now it's yours. And in the nonprofit space, this is a lot like that there's nobody to turn to that's going to handle everything from the accounting and finance to the fundraising to the program implementation to marketing, all of that. So, I really want to help people make the best decision. And if I were honest, more people than not end up not following through. But I look at that as a victory because instead of them investing a lot of time and money and then it petering out along the way because they weren't really prepared, I'd rather help them see all that up front so it saves them that and they can direct their resources towards something that's very productive.
And perhaps people will be able to move in that better direction if they had a CIO. I knew what a CIO was just because I've been doing some business a little bit. And a lot of people out there do know what a CIO is. I'm not sure if the people who are listening do right now. Chief Impact Officer. And I say them slowly enough because because you do want to make an impact with that position. Let me back off just a little bit, though, because I think titles are fun. I worked in an industry as radio, and we had titles all over the place. Yeah. And titles meant we can't pay you anymore, but you can put something on your desk.
Right.
Because we went from program.
You felt better about making the same amount of money.
Yes, exactly. Well, yeah, and it looks good on a resume, and I guess it stands for something. But back me out a little bit. Let's go through the history of business a little bit, and explain to me how the title came to be. Have you ever created? Because you're a very creative guy. Have you ever created a title for someone in your organization where you're like, you know what, this is not a program director, this is not a CFO, this is not an administrative assistant. And you, because I've seen people actually create titles, and is there a danger in doing that? Because once you create that title, by getting rid of it, you're saying you don't need it in your business anymore. Just talk a little bit about titles. I think it's really amazing. I think titles are great. I think they make you feel good as opposed to just being a worker bee. But just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So you have to be careful in today's world. Like you see it in the football realm where somebody's a defensive coordinator, but they came from a defensive coordinator. So they have to show that it's an uptick. So they may get also called the assistant head coach,
yes,
along with defensive coordinator, and some arbitrary duty or responsibility that shows that it's not a lateral move. So a lot of people play those kind of games, but you have to be careful because you can actually receive equal opportunity complaints if you give somebody a promotion on paper, even though it's just written out. Their job description virtually hasn't changed. But if you give them to make them, to appease them or to make them feel better, like you're talking about, it still comes across as even though their job didn't change, if you change their title, it can come across as a promotion. And now they actually have a complaint that they've received a promotion without a pay raise. And so,
do you have to receive a pay raise with a promotion? Well,
you have to understand, it depends on, I would say the answer to that question is no. You don't not legally have to, but if somebody has a complaint against you or the organization, it can show as evidence, because what they could say is, they keep piling more responsibility, but they won't give me more money. So they value me, but they're not. And so that could be actually turned into a complaint to show that you are not being fair to your employees.
I got you. That's really interesting.
Yeah. But going back to your question about have I ever combined, I do it all the time because, depending on every job or every business is unique. And so I'll just give you a real recent one. We had a part-time administrative position in our warehouse, and somebody came in and they already were used to making a little bit more. So I was trying to say, how can I give them? So we were trying to fill the part-time position, but then also a need came up. So we actually took that part-time position and a full-time position and combined them. Mm-hmm. And then we're able to pay them a little bit more and came up with a different title as a result of it. Going back to my previous comments, I do always try to, if I'm asking somebody to take on more responsibility, whether it's, hey, I need you to supervise somebody you previously weren't supervising, or I need you to add a workload, I always try to put some type of compensation attached to it, just out of respect for them.
Sure.
Just so they don't feel like that I'm taking them for granted and that I'm recognizing, hey, I'm giving you more to do. My expectation is still to the same standard. So therefore you're worthy of compensation. But all this is wrapped around this idea of a CIO, because I do have a CIO, and it's funny because it used to be a CIO, used to be Chief Information Officer. Mm-hmm. So years ago, before, as the internet was coming on board, and everybody's like, oh, whatever. Now we figured out, okay, a website. Now we know how to market. I remember, and I'm going to chase a rabbit here for just a second, because we were just talking about the very first, my father bought me a computer, my first computer back in 94. I was married, already had kids then, but our first home computer, it was a compact. But I bought my first one in 98. I spent $2,000 on a display, a hard drive, and a little inkjet printer at Circuit City. And that's how old this is. Circuit City doesn't exist anymore. They were, for those who may not know, those were the best. It was a cheaper form of Best Buy.
They were huge for a long time, man. Huge.
Yeah, the stores were as big and popular as Best Buys are.
Yeah.
But back then, I remember they were still asking questions like, if the internet can ever figure out how to, because Amazon was coming out, and they were like, if we can just ever figure out how to monetize the internet, and boy, did they figure it out. But a lot of people were just adding websites. And there were tons of businesses, big corporations that didn't have websites, didn't see the value in it. And of course, all that changed over time. And so the chief information officer became a valuable person to be able to come in and manage company email systems and do all that. Now, a lot of that is outsourced now, but you have all sorts of companies. We pay somebody thousands of dollars a month to manage our internet and all of that. Mm-hmm. So CIOs are kind of going away in terms of smaller companies because it's just easier to outsource all your technical stuff and put that on somebody else. So CIO, though, is new in terms of impact. And when I came across this term a couple of years ago, I thought, this is really key in having what I really need in leading an organization. So when I came here to Montgomery, coming up in a few months on 2 years, but when I came to Montgomery, I was like, my leadership style is I always want to be forward moving, which means I have to delegate down to directors to be able to make decisions. And what I kept explaining was I had a previous person who was an operational person. Mm-hmm. When I got here, he was the COO, Chief Operating Officer, but he was used to operations. And I said, what I need is somebody overseeing, not being in charge of the directors, not bossing the directors, but looking and understanding what the culture is of the organization, what impact we're trying to have, and looking strategically as each department moves independently, but all in the same direction and not getting too far out ahead of the other. And so, sure enough, but he couldn't grasp that because it's not something he'd ever been exposed to. And he was getting close to retirement. And so I just and I understood, just kind of gave up. But after he left, I was like, I need somebody. I don't need somebody to help me manage the directors. I need somebody that directors can go to because everybody's moving and communicating. And inevitably, there's going to be a director or a department that starts to maybe fall behind a little bit or is making decisions that necessarily are not decisions that I think fit our culture or fit the direction I want to go. And so the CIO is kind of the second in charge for me here and is overseeing all departments to ensure that everything she is seeing along the way fits with the company structure and can intervene in ways that it doesn't feel like a boss is coming down. So she's the director coach, if you will, mm-hmm. And she's helping them keep it between the lines of what she believes that I've given them. And I cannot begin to tell you the number of, she's absolutely fantastic at it. And I cannot begin to tell you the number of times I've gone in her office, and there's lots of things she doesn't need. If a director's struggling with something and she helps that person see or brings that person more in line just from a talk, she's not going to come tell that, oh, your director's really struggling. She kind of keeps that on the down low because she's there to help build them up and help them be more successful. But even as good as she is, I remember the day, because I told her about this concept, and I said, I really want you to think about doing this because I really feel like I need somebody strategically when I'm not there, when I'm not looking in direction A, I'm over here looking at B. I need somebody that's still looking in A, but can see it not from a departmental view, but a whole organizational view. So we were sitting in the office one day, and I was with 3 other department heads, and sure enough, they were all talking about different things, trying to figure out the guidance that I'd given them and how did that fit in their department. They were wrestling with it and couldn't. And so we talked it out, and then they all got up and left. And Joanne was here, my CIO, and said, I totally get why you need a CIO now. Because there were 3 directors struggling with how to take a cultural guidance or and incorporate that effectively into their department with their unique things. And so Joanne was there to step outside with them and go, okay, let's start working down your issues, and I will, coach and guide you. And so she keeps the whole train running.
Yeah.
And it frees me up to then, because it's like she's getting down in the weeds and coaching and helping them. And I'm free to look externally at the organization to keep the forward thinking going. And to be honest with you, I don't know where I'd be right now without her.
I got to dumb this down a little bit.
All right. I'm too high and mighty right now.
You are flying high, brother. And I'm going to let you go.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I got to bring it back because a lot of people don't speak this vernacular. They don't. CFOs, CEOs, COOs, CIOs. Am I missing any C's? Is an F, is an E, is an I, is an O?
Technically, you can do, like right now they have Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. I mean, any department that you do can ultimately rise up to the C level. But what you mentioned are your standard ones.
Okay, so
CFO and your CEO.
So, because I know we're going to get an email on this. What is the hierarchy there? What is the order? Because when someone says I'm a CEO, I don't know if that's better than a CFO. I mean,
CEO is the Chief Executive Officer, so the CEO is going to always be in charge. Now, one of the things that can be a little confusing is when you see that somebody is the CEO and president of a company.
Yeah,
and even then, the CEO is going to outrank your president, because I've often wondered that, because even in food banking, you'll have somebody's the CEO and president of this food bank.
The CEO outranks the president?
Yes, because the president is more on the operational side a little bit, and not doing what a chief executive officer does, but if you had two functions, a CEO and a president, that president falls up under the oversight of a CEO. The CEO is going to be your top dog in any organization.
Yeah.
But if you think about a large corporation, you're going to have, let's take the CFO, Chief Financial Officer. So you're going to have accountants, and they're going to report up to maybe the VP of Finance, and then those VPs are going to be the CFO. But when you're talking the C level, they call it C-suite. The C-suite, SUITE, then you're talking about the upper echelon of whatever department you're over, you are the top dog.
Okay.
But that's departmental wise. So the CFO is going to be over all your finances. Your COO, your operational officer, chief operational officer, is going to be over all your operational pieces. And then, you could have an information piece, you could have whatever it is. If you see chief in front of it, they're the top dog of that part of the company, but they will all answer to your CEO.
Gotcha. Okay. And I've always wondered that because we do throw titles around a lot, and there are a lot of CEOs, and I've always wondered, and sometimes, I watch a lot of sports, and you'll see, you throw in ownership, and quite frankly, I've always considered ownership the top dog, the top shark, but I'm not so sure. Am I wrong?
No, you're thinking right. So take a football team, and unfortunately, I'm an Atlanta Falcons fan for life.
Okay,
I have a lot of pain and suffering in my sports world. So Arthur Blank is the owner.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So Rich McKay, I think, is the CEO. He hires the CEO as the owner. So he's the owner. He can fire the CEO.
Yeah.
I am in a nonprofit space. All nonprofits are required to have a board of directors. So you'll have a CEO, or in some smaller nonprofits, you might have an executive director. It's virtually synonymous in the nonprofit space. But as a CEO, you always have either a board of directors or somebody to answer to. So it's not like you own the company. You're just the person who drives the agenda, can have the most influence. You can hire and fire anybody in the organization. So you're still the top dog of the organization, but that does not mean you're free from accountability, because that's what a board of directors does.
Gotcha.
Is they can come together according to the bylaws of an organization, whether you're for-profit or nonprofit, and fire the executive. Now, if it's a private company, so you don't have the board, private company, you have ownership. And again, even if a private owner of a company goes or an organization goes, I'm going to hire a CEO because I don't want to be involved in the day-to-day management.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to hire the CEO to make sure all that's happening. But I'm going to tell that CEO, here's my expectations. And if the business doesn't turn a profit in X amount of years, I'm going to come in and replace him. And he certainly can do that as the owner, but that's a private company versus a public company.
This is really interesting. So where does a president and a vice president play into a company, or is it just purely a title of entitlement?
It's from what I've seen, it's purely preference as to how you label. Gotcha. Even in food banking. So it's not like you can say, well, in food banking, you can't have this title, because I've actually seen if you have a president, so if you're a CEO and president, or president and CEO of this company, then lots of times, instead of calling somebody a director, like I choose director. Mm-hmm. So I have director of operations. I have development director, so on and so forth. Somebody may be the VP of operations or VP of, so those terms are synonymous. I mean, when you hear vice president, for the most part, it's one of, hey, I'm certainly not at an entry level. I'm up higher in the company. But I've also seen it where you'll have a department. You have senior VPs, and then you have VPs, and then over the senior VP, you'll have multiple senior VPs. Then you'll have the actual, and then you'll have, so every company, when you get into the banking world, everybody's a VP, because when you go out to meet with clients, you want there to be clout.
Yeah.
And so VP of something gives you sufficient clout. But like you said, it's a title, and every organization, it really depends on what you have in that organization. So you could be a VP with a lot of authority and a lot of clout, or you could be a VP in name only. Are
there standard things that come with titles? This is just really interesting to me. For example, expense accounts. I mean, are there standard things in most businesses where, okay, now that you're a CFO or CEO or whatever, that it comes with a certain, not only a responsibility, but some extra give there as far as what a company goes to?
Yeah. So if I had a CFO, now we happen to outsource based on our history, it just works out better for us. We outsource all our finances, so we don't actually have a CFO. But the last nonprofit, we did have a CFO. So we did everything internally. So I would expect a CFO to not need to send their information out to a CPA firm. Mm-hmm. I would expect they could be running QuickBooks or whatever software system they wanted to, accounting, financial software that they wanted to, but that they would do it all. And the CFO should understand everything of how to operate that system and proper accounting principles. Yeah. And then you get audited every year. And so you expect a CFO to manage all that effectively and bring in all the accountability standards. So when somebody's a chief of something, right away that says they have authority over people typically, or if they don't have authority over people, they've got authority over processes.
Gotcha.
But they are at the top of the company. Now, again, in theory, you could have 5 people and name every one of them president of their department, and nobody be up under them. And I've seen them do it where they'll give somebody a title of VP of this, mm-hmm. and they don't have anybody up under them. And sometimes, I have a few directors that don't have anybody up under them. It doesn't mean that they are less because they don't have the responsibility of supervising. It just means their role is typically so big and so large, it doesn't fit up under another director. It's something that's the responsibilities. Like, for instance, I have in our nonprofit space, I have a director of corporate development, and she spends all of her time, dealing with Chamber of Commerce's and city government and all the corporations sponsorships and just partnerships and all that. And it's a full-time job, and she's great at it. So that's all the kind of stuff. So it's really, there's kind of a general rule, but there's no hard and fast rules about what you can do with titles.
He is the CEO of the Heart of Alabama Food Bank. Michael Coleman joins us every single week here at Mission Minded. We also have another show that airs immediately after this on TKR, and of course you can go check them out, listen to them where you want. We don't care. Just make sure you listen to them. Podcasts are available on every major indice, including iHeart, of course, not to mention iTunes and Spotify. It's a fantastic show called Bone by. I'm sorry, I always want to say Bone. Bite by bite. I'm always trying to throw a bone in there. I'm going to throw you a bone right now. I want you to, and only for me. There's other people listening out there right now that are probably business owners that probably get this stuff. But I'm reading the 3 key leadership roles that go across being a CIO, and when I'm looking at corporate social responsibility, I'm like, I don't even know what that means. What is that?
Yeah, we could probably easily do a whole show on this, but it's called really ESG. So anybody that Googles ESG, all these pictures will come up, and basically imagine a pie that's sliced 3 ways, and you have environmental under one, then you have social under another, and you have governance on the other. And the reason ESG has become such a big deal, although I think it's starting to wane a little bit, is because people are putting, from activists to local governments, they're putting pressure on big corporations to say, how are you being a good partner? What are you doing to impact your community that you're in, other than provide jobs? What are you doing to impact and what's your environmental impact? What's your social impact? What's all this? And now that can be a dangerous line, because you can be a company. I mean, we don't have to go any further than Bud Light recently, who had the huge marketing thing. Now, a CIO at that point would come in with the understanding what the views of the company, and that could come down in part from the board of directors, in part from the CEO. And so a CIO would say, okay, marketing director, we want to make sure that your values and your goal, not stating whether they're right or wrong, good or bad, but you work for this company, and so we want your values to be aligned with the company's values, or at least our marketing efforts to be aligned. And what she did was she aligned her own values using the brand Bud Light.
Yeah.
And so you see what happened when it's cost them billions of dollars at this point. So a CIO is somebody who would then step in and go, okay, marketing, you're going to do this. Let me see before it goes to market. Let me just see. And then if it's not in alignment, if that person, he or she, does not feel like it's in alignment, it would then elevate that up higher or coach that marketing person to change until it comes into an alignment. But without that, the CEO is not going to look at every commercial and approve every commercial at a corporation like Budweiser. So all of this, the CIO in this particular article has talked about how it's constantly aligning values. And so you think about this. We have a mission here at Heart of Alabama Food Bank, and we have a culture, and we have goals that we're trying to establish. Now, when you're a director and you're doing people and you're trying to get a certain amount of food out and you're trying to relate to agencies, you got 1,000 things to consider. And so you might start, let's say, treating your employees less than they need to be. So it starts to butt against the culture of how we want to treat employees. Or they could be reaching out with agencies where we want to have more of a servant leadership mindset. They're reaching out more harshly and more dictatorial to agencies. So when the CIO sees those type of things, that's when they step in and go, well, the actions of this department, you're moving along, but you're doing it outside of our culture. So I've got to help you realign how you're doing business with the CEO's vision and culture that he or she has set.
All right, navigating ethics conflicts. Oh man, if you call me into a meeting for that on a Monday morning, I may just quit. I don't even know if I want to be part of that. But it's a good thing because it does kind of push off the idea that it's all about the bottom line. It's not about the bottom line.
Yeah, because if you think about it, if you have two companies that come together and my old bank just merged, I mean, this happens all the time. Banks merge. Well, you would think every bank is going to have virtually the same culture. But really, every organization is really unique. And so that's what a CIO can do, is come in when you have ethics where you say, well, no, for the last 15 years, I've worked with this bank and we've done this because for these reasons. And they're like, yeah, but the focus is no longer on X. We want it on Y. And so here's how to do that. And so again, it affects these different areas, but it's virtually the same, which is constantly realigning people to mission and how you want to carry out that mission.
Okay. And then finally, articulating values and spreading purpose.
Yeah. So every organization has values, but not everybody in that organization knows how to live those out, especially if those values, the company values, are not in alignment with your personal values. Because we've all dealt with people from a company and they've been total jerks, or they've been dishonest, or they've been whatever. And that reflects on the company. I don't want somebody going out representing us that's not going to be kind and have a servant's heart and all those kind of things. So we're real particular about who you put out there on TV and how your organization is represented. And so you just want to make sure that those values are that each person understands what that looks like inside of their area. And think about it. If you didn't, and let's say I took the CIO out, it's me. And so I'm in here at my desk and I'm doing this, and I may get out and go fundraise and I'm doing some different things, but I'm not in the warehouse 24/7. I can't see how managers are interacting, supervisors are interacting with the agencies and interacting with the entry-level employees all the time. Or when they have conflicts that they need some immediate advice about what to do because they recognize an ethical conflict or something. And so that CIO is the first stopping point for somebody to say, hey, I ran up on an issue. Can I run it by and give me what your thoughts are? And they constantly then continue to realign and help them. And what we've seen is each director has gained tons of confidence in our CIO, goes to them with problems because they know there's no retribution. I mean, we want you to ask those questions. We want you to grow, but it's just a vital piece of somebody who gets the big picture, can explain it on an individual level, but give them practical ways to incorporate things that otherwise, and that frees up all those things. If it weren't for the CIO, I would have to be involved in, which pins me down to the desk and keeps me from looking forward.
Any questions or considerations, suggestions, info@TonyCurryRadio.net, info@TonyCurryRadio.net. We try about once a month to just answer email questions, and we'll plan to do that next week. This is Mission Minded with Michael Coleman and Tony Curry.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.